Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're looking into two true crime cases. They really highlight, I think, the difficulties of captivity and justice. We'll be looking at first the story of Laura Cowan and how she survived, and then going into the 1953 murder trial of Barbara Graham. And both of these come from A&E True Crime, their articles.
Yeah. And I think what's so interesting is they're both about women, going through these incredibly difficult situations. So we'll, be thinking about how justice is delivered.
Right. So let's start with Laura Cowan. Okay, so imagine 1995, you're a single mother and you're struggling. Your husband is in prison. You meet this guy at your mosque. His name is Mansa Musa Muhummed.
But here's the thing. He was already practicing polygamy.
Oh, wow.
He had another wife and 12 children.
Wow.
So, I mean, right away, there's there's a power imbalance there.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't sound like the best start to a relationship. And it gets even darker, right? Like it becomes more and more controlling, more and more violent.
Yeah.
And it just makes you wonder, like, how does someone like Muhammad do that? Like, how do they exert that much control and isolate someone like Cowan?
Yeah.
What are, like, the warning signs here?
Well, I think that's the thing with coercive control. It's insidious. It's like, it's not just the physical abuse. It's
Yeah.
this process of wearing someone down,
Yeah.
their sense of self-worth, independence. They get trapped, and then it's really hard to leave.
Right. Yeah. Like they're almost in a psychological prison before anything else even happens.
Exactly.
And unfortunately for Cowan, this does escalate in 1998 when Muhammad imprisons her and her two children in his garage.
Wow.
And they're deprived of everything. There's no heat. There's no running water, no proper bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
They barely have food for 7 months. It's just awful.
And, the physical and psychological impact of that, especially on the children, they're still developing. And her son was showing all these signs of being malnourished.
Like what?
His stomach was distended, his skin was sagging, and it was like an unusual color.
Oh, gosh.
It's just a reminder of what abuse and neglect can do.
Yeah. And yet, even in this, like, really horrible situation, Cowan shows, like, this amazing resilience. She finds a legal pad, and she starts writing down everything that's happening. I mean, it's just incredible.
Right, like to have the strength and the presence of mind to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something we see a lot in these kinds of captivity situations. People hold on to hope,
Yeah.
they're resilient. It's amazing.
Yeah. But her bravery goes even further. She knows that he'll find those notes if he searches her, so she hides them in her underwear, and she tells her son, if I die before you, make sure someone gets these notes.
Oh.
I mean, that's powerful. Like, she's determined to protect her children no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they go to the post office with Muhammad to pick up food stamps. They're in line. This stranger starts talking to Muhammad, and for a moment, he's distracted.
Oh.
And Cowan just takes this chance, She goes to the postal worker, and she slips the notes, the ones from her underwear, in with all the paperwork.
Oh, wow.
And that moment, it just seems so ordinary, but it was like this turning point.
Timing. Sometimes that's all it takes, like that little window.
Yeah.
And it changes everything.
It makes you think, like, what was going through the postal worker's mind?
Yeah.
They're just, doing their job, and then they get this plea from a stranger.
And it took courage to act on it.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't know the whole story, but they helped.
Yeah, and their help made all the difference. 2 days later, the sheriff's department arrives at Muhammad's house. They have Cowan's notes, and they arrest him.
Wow.
And eventually he's convicted on 25 counts. Torture, abuse, false imprisonment. He gets 7 life sentences back to back.
Wow. I mean, that shows that this kind of abuse won't be tolerated.
Right.
And it shows how important it is to speak out. Even if it takes time, justice can happen.
Absolutely. Cowan's story is, it's really incredible, right? It shows the strength of the human spirit, the will to survive, and, like, speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
Even when it seems like there's no chance.
It really makes you think, how can we support victims better?
Yeah.
How can we prevent this kind of abuse?
Yeah. Like, what can we do so people like Cowan have a voice and they can get help
Right.
before it's too late?
Exactly.
So that was Laura's story about this incredible resilience. But now we're going to shift gears to Barbara Graham.
Mm-hmm.
And her case is really different. It raises all these questions about the justice system, the system that's supposed to protect us.
Yeah. So we're in Burbank, California, 1953. This 64-year-old woman, Mabel Monahan, has been murdered. She was bound and beaten and suffocated in her own home. And it turns out they thought she had a safe full of money, like a jackpot.
Oh, wow.
that belonged to her ex-son-in-law, who was supposedly connected to organized crime in Las Vegas.
So they were looking for mob money,
Yeah.
but then it turned into a murder. And that's where Barbara Graham comes in.
Yeah. So she's accused of being involved, along with these two guys, Jack Santo and Emmett Perkins.
Okay.
But the media just went crazy. They, painted her as this ruthless, cold-hearted woman. They called her Bloody Babs.
Wow.
But, her criminal history was mainly, prostitution, bad checks, perjury.
Okay.
Not exactly, a hardened criminal.
It's interesting how the media can just, shape the whole story.
Oh, yeah, especially back then.
Right, no internet, no social media.
Right.
So do you think that frenzy, the media frenzy, affected her trial?
I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but you have to think about the time, It's the 1950s.
Right.
Everything's really strict, especially for women. And if a woman is accused of a violent crime, she's like this threat
Right.
to all those norms.
Right.
So she's an easy target for sensationalism, for public judgment.
So it seems like she was already facing an uphill battle.
Right.
But there's more to this story, right? What about her trial? What about the injustices she faced?
Well, this is where things get really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Marcia Clark, the prosecutor from the O.J. Simpson trial.
Oh, yeah?
Years later, she looked back at Graham's case and found some shocking stuff.
Really?
Stuff that really makes you question what happened.
Okay, this is getting good. What did she find? So, what was so groundbreaking? What did Clark find?
Well, she was going through all these trial transcripts, right? And she found this hidden statement. It was from John True, one of the accomplices. He'd been granted immunity for testifying. And this statement, it was totally different from what he said in court. In court, he said Graham pistol-whipped Monahan before the other guys even got there.
Oh, wow. So the prosecution, they knew about this different statement.
Yeah.
But they didn't tell the defense.
Nope.
That's not right.
It's a huge violation. It's what they call a Brady violation from a Supreme Court case, Brady v. Maryland. Basically, prosecutors have to share anything that could help the defense,
Right.
especially if it makes a witness look less believable. It's imagine playing a game and your opponent hides their best cards.
Yeah, totally unfair.
Exactly. You can't have a fair trial like that.
And True's testimony, that was the only thing directly linking Graham to, the violence.
Yeah.
So without it, the case is a lot weaker.
Exactly. And you got to think about True's situation. He's facing serious charges, so of course he's going to cooperate, even if it means lying.
Right.
And the prosecution, they wanted a conviction. So maybe they just ignored those inconsistencies, or maybe they hid them on purpose.
It's scary, someone's life on the line and they're playing these games. But then there's Donna Prow, this other woman.
Ah, yes, Donna Prow. She was in jail with Graham, and they got romantically involved.
Okay.
But it's not what it seems.
What do you mean?
Well, Prow, she was working with the police.
Oh, wow.
They had her get close to Graham, become friends, and then kind of push her to ask for a fake alibi.
Oh, so they set her up. That's messed up.
It's incredibly manipulative and possibly illegal, but it gets even worse. So they have this undercover officer, Sirianni, right? He testifies about the whole fake alibi thing, and then Prowl disappears.
Wait, what?
Gone. The police made sure she wasn't available for the defense.
So they couldn't even question her
Nope.
about Sirianni's testimony or how the whole alibi thing even started.
Exactly. I mean, that's a huge blow to the defense.
It's manipulating the whole system.
Yeah, they were just trying to get a conviction no matter what. And for Graham, it was devastating. She couldn't defend herself properly. She's convicted, sentenced to death.
I mean, this whole story, it makes you wonder if the justice system even works. It's supposed to be fair, to protect people, but it feels like they took advantage of her.
It definitely shows that the system, while it's meant for good, can be used in bad ways.
Right.
And, sometimes innocent people get hurt.
So we have these two cases, right? Cowan, who survives this horrific ordeal, and Graham, who might have been failed by the very system that should have protected her. What do we learn from this?
Well, I think they both show us how complicated justice is. Cowan's story, it's inspiring. She fought back, even when it seemed impossible. But Graham's case, it shows how flawed the system can be, how easily it can be manipulated, and the consequences of those flaws, they can be devastating.
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder about all those other cases where maybe justice wasn't served. So where do we go from here? How do we make things better?
Yeah, it does make you wonder, how many other cases are out there. But the good news is there are people fighting for change, like the Innocence Project.
Yeah, they're doing great work.
And so many other advocates, they're working so hard to expose these wrongful convictions and to, like, fix the system.
Like they're stepping in where the system failed.
Yeah.
But it must be tough, right? Like an uphill battle.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. You know, fighting for justice, even if it takes a long time. It's not just about, like, freeing innocent people. It's about stopping it from happening again. By showing everyone the problems, the things that lead to these wrongful convictions.
So it's about like holding people accountable,
Right.
making sure things are transparent and fair.
Exactly.
So that everyone, no matter who they are, has a real shot at justice.
Right. And remembering that justice, it's not just a legal thing.
Right.
It's about people.
Yeah.
We have to see the pain that these wrongful convictions cause, not just for the person who's convicted, but for their families, their communities.
Yeah, it affects everyone around them for years sometimes. Makes you think, like, what can we do? How can we make sure justice actually happens?
It's a big question. You know, both of these cases, they're so different, but they both make us ask, what is justice? How do we get it? And what can we do, like, as individuals, as a society, to make it real for everyone?
Yeah, those are big questions,
Yeah.
but they're important ones, right? Like, if we want to make a difference, we got to think about them.
I think so. And I hope that's what you take away from this, listening to us today. Don't just, like, hear these stories and forget about them. Let them make you think, question things, demand better, and never stop fighting for a world where justice is real for everyone.
That's a great message. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.